Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. I will call the March 11th Select Board meeting to order at 5:30. Two minor changes to the agenda. Under Town Manager's Report, number one, the overview of the legal services transition. We are going to move that to just below approval of Treasury warrants. And when we get to the last public hearing for the HDC appeal, we will be opening that strictly to continue it again until April 1st. So if anyone is here for that, there's not a real reason to stick around, come back on April 1st. Other than that, we will accept the agenda as written and move to announcements from the town manager.
Thank you. This meeting is being video and audio recorded. The Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust is currently accepting nominations for the 2026 Dr. Howard Dickler Citizen Award. This award honors a community member who demonstrates exceptional voluntary leadership and advocacy in support of affordable housing on Nantucket. And nominations may be submitted to the housing office. The email is on the select board meeting agenda through April 10th. And there's more on the town website. Please stay current with town news. The town's latest monthly e-news updates are now available. We've distributed a housing department newsletter as well on Monday, March 2nd. And you can sign up and subscribe to receive future updates directly in your inbox. Info on the select board meeting agenda. We're going to show you a web page for the annual town meeting, 2026 annual town meeting. We wanted to point out some specific features that people can check out at their leisure. So this is a little bit new. On the left, there are the debt exclusion projects, and you can click on them and get information about them. So if you're curious about what is on the warrant for debt exclusions, they're on the left, and on the right, there's a tax rate calculator. I think that is updated, Brian, or? Okay, it's a little not updated right now. So I'm told by a finance director it will be updated by the end of the week. But you can input your property information and it will come up with what the tax rate impact will be to your specific property. The town has a summer internship program. We are currently accepting applications for it. It provides students with hands-on experience in local government and the opportunity to contribute to town projects and services. Again, info on the select board meeting agenda. The health department is offering a 3-day serve safe food protection manager course, April 1 through 3. It'll be at the Four Fairgrounds roadside here in this building from 9 to 4. There's an exam on the final day. It's $50, and you can sign up on the health department. You can register by emailing the health department. Again, info on the select board meeting agenda. And lastly, the town was awarded a $175,000 seasonal communities grant through the Commonwealth's Seasonal Communities Grant Program to support affordable housing trust initiatives. And to read the full press release on this, info is on the town website. And I believe that select board member Moore reviewed this at the meeting last week, but we want to make sure people know about it. And that's it for announcements.
Okay. Any select board announcements or comments? Okay, seeing none. We don't have any updates this evening on prior public comments. They weren't ready for this week. So now we will move to public comments for items that are otherwise not on our agenda for discussion this evening. And just note that we do limit to 3 minutes.
Good evening, Amy Eldridge. I just want to kind of talk about the smart meter. I saw the town put out some PR on that today. I'm one of the people who got an estimated reading for 2 months. And in that 2 months, my smart meter went in sometime in early November. I was charged almost $400 above what I normally pay. I'm on auto payment, so it didn't really click. The money was just coming out for my bill. So I noticed that nothing came out for last month. So I start looking through all my statements online to find out that I've had this credit. I was never notified by email that it was estimated. It was never even presented here. And the 2 times that I was here, that when you got your smart meter in, it could take 30 to 60 days to get into an actual reading versus an estimated payment, because I would have been asking questions about that back then. I think it should be a real concern to the town and our state representatives and our leaders that the bills aren't making sense. It's not what they presented to us in this facility twice online. And when I called National Grid, they in turn spent an hour trying to figure out what was going on. And then the woman just stopped talking to me for 2 solid minutes on my phone yesterday. I'm going, hello, hello, are you still there? And had to hang up. And I was just so frustrated that I can't even figure out where these credits are on the bills themselves. They don't say that you're getting a estimated reading versus an actual meter reading. And you would think with them being smart meters, it would be a little bit more efficient. But I also don't know whether or not my bill has gone up 500% or not, because I can't figure out what they did from November till now. And the kicker is, when my credit ran out, I had a $24 credit left for last month. They took that as part of partial payment, but never dipped out the remainder of the bill. So now I have a $200 bill that's going to flip over to April 1st that now looks delinquent because they can't figure out what they're doing. And I hope that you guys and Julian Sear or Mr. Moakley can look into this for us, because this can't be how National Grid, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, runs their business and is allowed to run rickshaw over its clients. And I think that it should be a real deep concern to you guys as to what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jason Graziadei, Nantucket Current. Just kind of following up also on the same topic of the smart meters. We published a story this morning kind of outlining a little bit about what Amy was talking about, some of the issues that people have been having with the bills being very, very high after the smart meters have gone in. And so I guess the story came out this morning, and then a couple hours later, the town put out a statement, which was a little bit surprising, saying basically that all of the issues had been resolved and that the issue was not definitively, the town said the issue was not because of the smart meters. And I guess I'm curious, what is the basis for that statement? Has the town independently verified that, or are we taking National Grid at its word? Just curious how that happened and what the basis for that statement is. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments this evening? Okay, seeing none, there's no new business. We have approval of minutes and treasury warrants.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. And the next up, we have the overview of the legal services transition.
So
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
just to quickly introduce this, our principal lead attorney, John Giorgio, is going to be retiring by the end of June, but he will be working very hard between now and then. And managing partner Lauren Goldberg is going to be assuming his duties and will act just like John does now. And we have been talking with them internally with town admin about the transition, and we thought it would be a good idea to publicly review what it will mean for the administration of the town and give them an opportunity to describe it.
Good evening, everyone. So I just wanted to take a minute to express my appreciation and gratitude to all the boards of selectmen that I've had the honor and privilege of providing legal services to over the last, I think it's 14 years. And to say that Nantucket has become very near and dear to me. And I like to say I can see Nantucket from my house, which is over in Chatham. Not quite true, but close. But it has really been a pleasure for me. And I'm sort of hanging up my, or taking down my shingle, I guess is the right analogy. Just because I'm ready for retirement, and my kids are insisting basically that I retire. So I just wanted to assure all of you that, you know, the legal services that we have provided is not one person by any stretch of the imagination. And I am delighted to say that Lauren Goldberg, who's here with me tonight, is going to take over those reins. And I have complete confidence that she is going to be able to provide those services, to coordinate them in a way that's seamless. And I know you're going to be very happy and pleased. Lauren is making room to, in her very busy schedule, to assume the role. And she's going to explain some of the things that the firm is implementing in order to make sure that those legal services are top notch. So thank you very much. And I'll still be around, available to answer questions. But obviously I will not be doing the bulk of the work. So thank you.
Thank you, John.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here. It's hard to follow John in any circumstance, but certainly in Nantucket for sure. Many of you have known me for quite some time. I work with John regularly, on some Nantucket things and on many other things as well. I've been at the firm since 2000, and I am the managing attorney at the firm, which means I have a great perspective about what's going on all over the state. And I'm hoping that, you know, we can use that and leverage that to the town's advantage. I've worked closely with town administration for a number of years, and really do believe that we're going to figure out a way to go forward. Even though John will not be with us every day, he will still be available both to me in terms of dealing with the town and to the town directly as needed, although we are going to try to let him retire. I did want to speak a little bit to what we're doing at the firm to provide for this transition. John has, been imparting to the Nantucket legal team, because as he said, there's not just one person who's doing work for Nantucket. There is several subject matter experts, real estate, contracts, land use, general municipal. I know I'm forgetting something. What did I say? Labor and employment. And so none of the people on that team are changing. The difference is that Devin Braun, who is a member at the firm, and I will be joining the team in a very official way. We are meeting weekly to discuss what is going on, making sure that all the members of the team know what each other are up to, and being able to connect those dots in terms of, if we're dealing with something in one area, how that impacts the others. We are establishing a really good communication system that we intend to work on with town administration to make sure that it's easy to see where things are and check in on things. And we are just trying to streamline the communications between the town and us. And just like you've had John at your meetings and in person and online, I'm going to be available to do those things. And as John said, I have been making time in my schedule so that I can, take on what I know is a very significant role in terms of supporting the town. So I look forward to working with everyone, or continuing to work with everyone. And I thank you for the opportunity. It's our honor and privilege, as John said, to represent the town, and we look forward to continuing with that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We all enjoy working with KP Law.
Anything else?
You have
Well,
a
I'll
lot.
just say I warned her today that we remember legal cases from 100 years ago. And like they're yesterday.
Or
and
Matt does.
Yeah, well, I'm not the only one. I get reminded when I don't bring it up. So I told her it's a tough job, so.
And I just reiterate, the bench is very deep and has been all along. So those folks that are working with the Housing Trust in particular, who are, and Amy over with Plus, and there's a great team working for us. But welcome aboard officially.
Next up, we have citizen departmental committee requests and reports. First is request for waiver of Historic District Commission, Planning and Land Use Services and sewer permit fees for the Baker's family at 9 Pine Grove Lane.
So I'm going to review this for you. As it's noted in your AIS in your packet, Jonas Baker and Christy Bassett Baker lost their home to a fire, and Paul Santos, who is representing them, has put in a letter requesting waivers of HDC building and sewer permit fees. I put a little note in your folder about 2 instances where other property owners lost their homes to fire and the waivers that were granted by the board. And regarding the sewer waiver request, you did grant a hardship waiver in the past in 2021 to 39 Surfside Road. I did ask and the sewer waivers are noted, they total $3,952.80. I did ask the housing department to review this request as well. And they had some suggestions. Because with 39 Surfside Road, when the board granted that waiver, it was owner occupied. Apparently that is no longer the case and it is being rented. And I don't think it's affordable rentals. So what they said was, while supporting the Bakers, housing would like to see waivers align with the select board's priorities around year-round housing. And they suggested 2 options. The waiver, if granted, be contingent on the home being used as year-round housing, or 2, a forgivable lien where the fees would only be repaid if the home were not owner occupied or utilized year-round. That pertains just to the sewer part of it, but I leave the rest to you, and Paul is here to also review.
Hi, Paul.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you. On behalf of Jonas and Christy Baker, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors. They are the owners of 9 Pine Grove Lane that many of you know in October of 2025 sustained a tremendous loss of the fire through the home through fire. Luckily, no one was hurt at the time, including several pets, including the family dog and cat were rescued. And as members of the board are aware, Christy and Jonas are both well-known and active year-round community members. Jonas in the restaurant business, Christy has been a longtime employee of the harbor master, working for Sheila as a town employee. So the application of the letter, I think, speaks for itself. We're here seeking waivers of the HDC plus and sewer permit fees. And with regard to the sewer permit fees, the breakdown that Erica gave you for the total currently is there's a disconnect fee of $300, a reconnect fee of $300, and then a privilege fee of $3,352.80. I would say, I think the request regarding the year-round housing is a valid one. And I can, if that's a condition of your granting of the fees, I'm sure I can talk to Jonas and Christy. And if they choose that's something that they do not want to adhere to, we could pay those fees right up front now, or they could follow the guidance with regard to the long-term potential if it ever does change from a year-round residence. So on behalf of the Bakers, we respectfully request the board's consideration. I would like to also say there's a number of local firms who are also working with Jonas and Christy to get this home rebuilt and get them back on the property. So thank you for your time and consideration.
What does the board think?
I like the idea of the year-round occupancy requirement. I'm just not sure how it's enforceable. As an alternative, could we do it as a lien repaid on sale? I don't know. So we recover it at some point in time, or I'm just trying to think about something that's actually can be managed effectively over time. It's the only question in my head. I love the idea though.
You know, I was happy to see that the housing office thinking that way. This is Chuck Barone from Strong Towns came and spoke on the kickoff for the master plan. This is what he recommends in his books is make sure you're collecting or you're, you know, putting a lien on or putting something in the future because towns don't collect enough as it is. And everyone you give, you're losing more and you're costing everybody, including the people that you're trying to help, more money. So they thought, you know, I think it's smart that they're thinking this way. So I think, you know, I'm in favor of giving it and putting some sort of restrictions that are enforceable and we can figure out how to do it.
What if I'm assuming they're taking the residential exemption as year-round residents, maybe the lien with should the property ever stop taking the residential exemption as the trigger point? But again, who would monitor it?
Yeah. If I might, Madam Chair, I think that would be difficult to monitor. I'm being advised that if the lien is voluntary, there could be a lien on the property. There would probably have to be some paperwork associated with that, but that's an option.
Well, why don't we vote it contingent on staff figuring out how to make it work? Because we're gonna have to.
Paul, what is the fee attributed to?
The sewer fees?
Yeah.
So so currently,
The disconnect and reconnect, I get.
it's
the rest of it.
it's a modification fee. It's a privilege fee basically that's attached to every, based on the number of bedrooms, the bathrooms and so forth. So based on the design flow of the rebuilt structure.
So it's because the structure is changing?
Yes.
Is what the fee is attributed to. So
Correct. The
they're
privilege fee is because
adding
the
more
structure is
bedrooms,
changing.
more fixtures, so
Yes.
forth.
Yes. The application fees are simply the 300 and the 300. Where typically new construction would be the $4,000 fee for residential. This, you get the benefit of the disconnect, reconnect.
Okay. So this is, you know,
It's a different-
potentially different than what we've done in the past because the way we do the fee is changed. And although I'm extremely sympathetic to this and want to do it, I'm not sure that we should be funding adding more to a house when everybody else who's in that boat does have to pay these. But I have no problems with the disconnect and reconnect, but that's not the bulk of it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, it is something. So it's at the end of the day, whatever the board feels comfortable with, you know.
And HDC voted and suggested that we waive their fees and so forth. But I'm not sure about the change in
Well, I'll make a motion to waive everything but the privilege fee and not worry about these other two things.
So let's call it the modification fee.
All right, the modification fee. I'll support the HDC and the two others, the disconnect, reconnect.
And it would be
And the
HDC.
building permit.
Building, which would be
Yep.
plumbing, electric, gas, whatever comes out of there.
But not the privilege fee and then not worry about the year round and the other.
Yeah, I mean, it's particularly sewer that concerns me, especially with this big sewer project looming on the warrant and us talking about putting some of those costs onto the people who are benefiting through fees. So I think that might be fair.
That was really helpful to understand that fee is being assessed because they're building essentially a bigger house or something that has more usage. Okay. Yeah, I would second Matt's motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next up, We have Department of Public Works Solid Waste Division review of proposed landfill fee adjustment schedule a public hearing, extend emergency solid waste regulation regarding disposal of yard waste at Town of Nantucket Solid Waste Facility from March 31, 26 to May 1, 26. Good evening, Drew.
Good evening, Drew Patno, Director of Public Works. Thanks for having us here this evening. I'm joined by Chris Lowe, Solid Waste Manager. Erica, you can go to the next slide. We'll quickly review an agenda. So want to touch on the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund budget very, very simply. The goals of this review and adjustment effort, which we've referenced in some of our departmental updates recently, what we actually considered when establishing recommendations, and then we'll go through the actual recommended commercial and residential tipping fees. Then we'll take a quick look at the effect that it would have on the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund and general fund budgets. And then we'll get into the other related recommendations and our anticipated next steps. Go to the next slide. So again, real short and sweet. Solid Waste Enterprise Fund budget is funded through a combination of tipping fees that are assessed for waste that comes to the facility and a generous general fund transfer, which is, of course, local tax dollars. So the breakdown for this fiscal year, $18.1 million budget with $6.2 million of estimated tipping fee revenue and $11.9 million of general fund transfer, which accounts for 66% of the overall budget. Of course, the general fund transfer should cover a lot of things like the residential drop-off area, recyclable, trash, compostable, non-compostable materials, the take it or leave it, household hazardous waste events, solid waste division payroll, and again, all the things that we don't charge tipping fees for. With that said, that 66% number definitely jumps out when you look at the breakdown of the budget and its funding sources. Go to the next slide, please. So the primary goal of this effort was to ensure that tipping fees assessed in the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund budget is fair, equitable, and appropriately balanced. The general fund has essentially been subsidizing a lot of waste that may not have come from residential generators for quite a long time, to be frank. Local tax dollars have been paying for commercial waste. And although there are some instances, household hazardous waste events, for example, where that may be acceptable or preferable, there are many waste streams currently where the tipping fee doesn't cover the full cost of that waste. As we all know, nothing's free, right? There's no free lunch. And so, somebody ultimately is paying for all the solid waste. And the goal is really just to make sure that who is paying for what makes sense. So this is an opportunity for some corrective action, both to review tipping fees that have not been appropriately adjusted in recent years and to take a common sense approach to determining who pays for what and how much. And one example of something that really, I think, not that we're adjusting it much, but something that kind of jumped out to Chris and I as we went through this process was the tipping fees for C&D or construction and demolition waste. They've remained unchanged from 2012 to 2023. We also want to ensure that pricing is set such that each waste stream is independent of one another. And I'll give you a quick example. So we don't want to set C&D tipping fees at $1,000 a ton, assuming that cost would cover the cost of operating, brush or tires, for example. If C&D waste reduced year over year and we lost that revenue, but brush and say tires continued to come in, we'd have a deficit that would be struggling to cover. So we want each waste stream to basically be self-sufficient. And then, we also want to ensure that pricing is set such that each waste stream also applies to the non-conforming wastes. So non-conforming waste that comes in causes challenges to the solid waste operation, but also incurs, ultimately the town ends up incurring a lot of additional cost for waste that come in a different state than we expect. You can go to the next slide, Erica. So as far as the considerations, so we spent a lot of time calculating exactly what the receiving, handling, hauling, so trucking and steamship authority, and off-island disposal, if applicable, costs the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund. So what is currently not included in these costs are the ancillary costs like site and building repair and maintenance, capital costs, engineering and permitting, utilities, et cetera. So none of that is baked into the cost of these tipping fees, but it's something we may want to consider in the future. We also evaluated years of waste data to understand the cause and effect that likely contributed to fluctuations in solid waste volumes for various waste streams over the years. And as I mentioned, we need to be prepared to adapt to those fluctuations. We must always consider that the site assigned area for the solid waste fund is a finite area. The buildings as they currently exist have space limitations, and both the site and buildings are good reasons for the town to remember that we inherit risks, fire risk. We must be leaders in environmental stewardship and have an obligation to remain open for business consistently to serve the island community. We also have to consider the risk associated with taking various materials, as well as the authorization to operate the ATO permit that the town holds. And I mentioned our desire to be recognized as MPS compliant previously, and ensure that our approach aligns with our overall community goals. And then lastly, we also have to consider the pros and cons of established tipping fees so that we hopefully incentivize behavior to support town goals. Undercharging causes the town to incur costs, which the general fund has to subsidize, but obviously overcharging incentivizes waste reduction, which may be a positive, but could also contribute to illegal dumping. So, you know, other communities have applauded the town for a progressive carrot versus stick approach as far as solid waste is concerned, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we should take everything for free or for far less than it actually costs to manage that waste. So it's definitely a balancing act, and I think we've structured this in a way that more or less checks all the boxes. Go to the next slide. So under the new waste service agreement, we do have a lot more clarity as far as what exactly those different waste streams cost. Having costs for different service areas in the waste service agreement, along with detailed analysis of the pass-through costs over the last year, really helped us better understand what different waste costs on a per unit basis, whether that's per item, per ton, or per truck, for example. This allowed us to establish what we believe are fair and reasonable rates for different types of waste. And additionally, I think it's worth noting that the new waste service agreement fixed fees for the 7 different service areas increase annually by 80% of the CPIU as established by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics in May of each year. So that rate was 1.88% for FY25 because the proposals were due in FY20. I'm sorry, 1.88% for FY26 because the proposals with the original prices were due in FY25. The reason I bring that up is we want to make sure that that escalation year over year is baked in now. We don't want to obviously be coming back here to adjust tipping fees again at the end of this fiscal year, which is just a few short months away. And lastly, as a reminder, there are a number of costs that affect the solid waste facility. The solid waste enterprise fund, such as the steamship rates for freight, off-island disposal for waste streams that don't stay here that have to be accounted for. Chris has done a really excellent job negotiating with off-island disposal facilities to ensure that Nantucket gets the best rates possible, while also, remaining compliant with our permits and not overextending ourselves. So with that said, off-island tipping fees are, of course, not surprisingly, increasing pretty significantly. And we, of course, keep a watchful eye on not only our external costs, but also the rates imposed for some waste streams at other locations here on island to make sure that we're competitive with those options. And ideally, hopefully still the cheapest show in town. Eric, you can go to the next slide. So here's a general overview of our recommended commercial tipping fees. On the next 3 slides, I actually broke this down into 3 categories for easier viewing because obviously the font is pretty small. Eric, you can go to the next slide. So the first thing that we are recommending is a new commercial hauler tipping fee to offset additional costs that are incurred due to mixed waste. So that's recyclables, Nantucket, and compostable waste that's collected at residential properties and brought to the solid waste facility. The main reason for that is recyclables, for example. If you bring your waste to the solid waste facility, there's a chute for tin and aluminum, there's a chute for plastic, and they're separated. But when it comes commingled, there's an additional level of effort and obviously then a cost to sorting that material at the MRF. Additionally, and even more importantly, non-recyclable, non-compostable waste and compostable waste are separated or expected to be separated when delivered, self-delivery to the solid waste facility. But again, waste that's brought by commercial haulers is commingled. The real challenge there is that there is a lot of non-compostable waste going to the composter, being processed, turning into residuals, being baled, and put into the landfill. And ultimately our landfill fills up a heck of a lot faster. And ultimately on a per ton basis, it is more expensive to deal with that waste through the composter, especially since it's not compostable, rather than going to the transfer station, being put in a truck and brought off island for ultimate disposal where it really should reside. So we did a lot of analysis and crunched the numbers, and we actually came out to, I think, $24.73 or something per truck was our estimate. As far as the additional cost, the level of effort, and the cost incurred for this commingled waste coming from the residential collection trucks. So that's the stake body trucks that, again, pick up waste from your home. It is our understanding that those trucks collect waste from 25 to 30 residences before making a trip to the solid waste facility. So, we don't think it's unreasonable. It's basically a $1 per household per pickup. But it's a cost that's being incurred. And unfortunately, right now, the cost of dealing with that isn't really appropriately apportioned to who's contributing to that. And then furthermore, the $50 per truck would apply to the rear load packer, traditional looking trash trucks that pick up commercial waste from hotels, inns, and restaurants, things like that. Go to the next slide. So these are all items that we currently charge for. And for the most part, these are adjustments to ensure that what we charge is sufficient to, like I said, cover the cost of these wastes. I'd argue we could have, and some might argue we should have gone even further with some of these increases. But, for now, I certainly felt like this was a good approach without causing issues for businesses. I want to be very clear. We don't intend to be unfriendly to businesses. We don't expect to turn a profit. But for now, we at least want to make sure that, again, for the most part, costs are covered by those who generate the waste.
Bricks and rebar, and they seem to be the big jump in mixed mu. Why are those three are the biggest jump? Everything else is sort of kind of what I'd expect.
Yeah.
Or
So
even less than I'd expect.
Yep. So I was going to highlight a couple things. So if you look at the second, fourth, and the seventh rows, there's three categories that are indented, and those are new categories. So we have currently one rate for mu. Mu is mixed excavation waste. So that's sand, gravel, loam, organic material, clay, for example. What ultimately happens a lot of times on a job site is that material gets mixed with trash, rubble, and other things that, when delivered to the solid waste facility, need to be screened and sorted out. So there's an additional handling cost. So we want to incentivize people to source separate. And so ultimately the difference between the first and second row is basically a surcharge on having to deal with, that quote unquote dirty or, contaminated material. For the ABC, so that's asphalt, brick, and concrete. Again, something we've always charged for. The ABC that's oversized and contains rebar that's greater than a 1/2 inch in diameter is challenging. And when I say oversized, we're talking about 8 inches thick, 4 feet by 4 feet. So kind of big slabs. Again, they can't go immediately into the crusher. So they need to be managed on site before they can be processed. The challenge with mu and ABC is we get so much of it. I wouldn't say we're necessarily running out of a space, but we are mindful that as time goes on and more material comes in, we are the end of the line, right? Like we don't then put this in a truck and bring it to anyone else and make it their problem from a space perspective. And then lastly, the other thing that we wanted to put out there was C&D, like a mixed load. And same thing, it's a $50 surcharge on C&D that on a job site, of course, inevitably, for example, metal and other gypsum wallboard, and Chris, I'm sure, has a good long list of the waste ban items in his head that ultimately, when they come to the transfer station, have to be kick sorted and separated. What happens is if it's not, when we ship it off island, we basically get penalized for that. Some places will refuse to take your waste. And again, there's an increased cost to dealing with that on site. So we want to incentivize source separation, at the site of generation. I think that about covers
Drew,
it. Good question. Yep.
To Matt's question, the biggest jump is ABC from what we have been charging to what we will be charging. And I think it's reflective of your analysis of the actual cost of processing it, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I probably didn't answer
No,
that
thank-
specific question, Matt. With that said, C&D is by far, well, actually, it's one of the waste streams that we get the most of at the solid waste facility. And what we're proposing is a 3% increase year over year. So as I mentioned earlier, there were 11 years where C&D rates weren't increased. And then there was a jump, I think, in 2023. And since then, it's been I think 6%, 4%, and now a 3% increase on C&D. Erica, you can go to the next slide. And then I wanted to separate out this category specifically, is leaf and yard waste and brush. Currently, we charge for brush. It's $142 for both commercial and residential waste. We are proposing an increase to $150 per ton. The other thing we did for brush was kind of back that out from tonnage into per truck, whether it's a pickup truck, a high-sided pickup truck, or a six-wheel dump truck, which aligns with some other places on the island where you can bring this type of waste. One thing we don't charge for currently is leaf and yard waste, and that is far and away the number one greatest volume of waste that comes into the solid waste facility. We accept 9,500 tons a year. It is well over $1 million per year to manage this waste. And this approach, I think, is also beneficial in the sense that leaf and yard waste and brush are now priced at the same amount. So if a truck comes in and it has brush and some grass clippings and leaves all in the same load, they're being charged at the exact same rate, which is easier for the scale house, easier for the generator. Erica, you can go to the next slide.
Drew, can I just interject again? The other reason to break it down is it's quicker to move through if they don't have to weigh all the small trucks, right?
Correct.
It's an eyeball on the load, the size of the truck, and a flat fee. So it'll keep the line moving.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of folks that don't have like a charge account, they'll weigh on the way in and then they have to weigh again on the way out. So that cuts down on a lot of that by just, paying per pickup truck, and then you can dump and go. Go to the next slide, Erica. So on this slide are the proposed residential tipping fees. I actually didn't bother to break this down into the multiple slides with different categories because even though it's hard to read on the screen, the only thing that I think is really important to note is that what we're doing is proposing to eliminate all tipping fees for residential waste. So today we charge for MU or mixed excavation waste, ABC, asphalt, brick and concrete, metal, C&D, tires, and brush. And we are proposing to change that tipping fee to $0 for all categories. I think this is something obviously we've heard from the public as far as their desire to incorporate residential waste fees into the local tax base. With that said, we will of course have some folks attempting to circumvent or abuse the system by bringing commercial waste in residential vehicles to avoid tipping fees. But I do think that obviously that is going to be such a small percentage of waste, and we do have some tools to try to stay on top of that. But ultimately, I think this is the approach that we've heard from the public. They would desire us to take. I did want to note something I mentioned when I brought up the waiving of brush tipping fees to help with the cleanup of Winter Storm Hernando. Residential waste is classified as being generated at a residential property and must be transported to the solid waste facility in a personal passenger vehicle by self-delivery. And vehicles with commercial plates or lettering, logos on the side pay commercial rates for disposal. So unfortunately, as much as some people may not think that it's a great system, it is really the only tool that we have to differentiate between residential and commercial waste. As far as I'm concerned, the only other system is the honor system. I'm not quite sure that is very successful. So as far as the public is concerned, again, I wanted to put out there that a lot of this waste, or really all of this waste, if it gets disposed of behind the scale house and you have to go over the scale and they either count it by the truck or weigh it, that is still necessary as far as our ability to be invoiced by Waste Options, but also for our reporting, annually and quarterly for permits. But with that said, if you're going over the scale, it doesn't necessarily mean you're paying for it. but that unfortunately is, what ends up having to happen with a lot of types of waste that travel beyond the residential drop-off area. So it can be a bit of hassle to wait in line for the scale, but we have to track all that material for good reason. Go to the next slide, Erica. So to go back to the quick breakdown of the budget, using 2025 waste volumes and applying these new rates, if adopted as proposed, you can see the revised FY26 budget on this slide for comparison purposes. So it's showing approximately $8 million in tipping fee revenue, a decrease to the general fund transfer from $11.9 million to $10.1 million, which represents a 10% shift of the overall budget from the general fund to actual revenue generated. This much more closely aligns based on our analysis of volumes and where different waste comes from, as far as the actual balance of waste types coming to the facility as far as commercial versus residential, and how the budget is structured. So we do feel it's a more equitable split for the enterprise fund, for commercial entities, and most importantly, the local taxpayers of Nantucket. There are certainly instances where right now some folks are currently paying for these costs through their taxes, and would then instead basically be paying for an increased rate as a pass-through cost to a commercial entity, a landscaper, contractor, et cetera. But the thought is, again, to ensure that really those who generate that waste are the ones that are paying for it, and other folks aren't expected to foot the bill. Erica, you can go to the next slide. And then lastly, a couple other recommendations. So as is written on the agenda, we do seek to extend the emergency declaration for leaf and yard waste till May 1st. But we do want to institute going forward a 100-ton per month per contractor limit on leaf and yard waste. And ideally, we would extend that to all waste streams. And the idea being that commercial entities that bring us 100 tons or more in any given month should notify us, or will be required to notify us at a time. That doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to take that waste. There are tonnage thresholds in the waste service agreement, so there's a significant financial impact to waste coming in. But I think very generally speaking, it's really important that we have more communication with folks that are bringing solid waste to the facility to make sure that we are prepared to accept it, and just having a little bit more control over what comes in and how much and when. And then next, as far as fees, obviously the commercial tipping fees are proposed to increase. But one thing I discussed internally was an approach to maintaining the FY26 commercial landfill user fee schedule, maintaining those same rates into FY27. So no change year over year for all classes. So that's class 1, 2A, 2B, 3, 4A, and 4B. That's the annual flat fee that's assessed to commercial entities. So a little bit of a break there, obviously, since we're changing a number of categories of solid waste. As I mentioned, as far as the next steps, looking to extend the emergency declaration until May 1st. We are hoping the board would be amenable to scheduling a public hearing regarding tipping fees for April 1st, 2026, with an eye on the new tipping fee schedule going into effect April 15th. And that is the last slide. So happy to answer any questions you guys might have.
Questions, and then we need to make a motion to schedule a public hearing.
Just one comment. When your conversations, what thoughts did you have if residential doesn't pay anything at all, even though they have been paying something? Are you worried that there'll be a lot of people like sort of making sure they're going out in their personal car? Do you think that will shift?
Not really. And the reason for that is right now, a lot of those categories we don't charge residential tipping fees for. Brush, leaf and yard waste. So in Massachusetts, if you have a vehicle with more than 4 wheels or over a certain gross vehicle weight rating, it has to have commercial plates anyway. I suppose if someone wants to death by 1,000 paper cuts us and bring things in, time and time again, and say it's residential and it's just from their property, that might be a way to circumvent it, but it's certainly a lot of effort. And I think overall, if you look at 9,500 tons of leaf and yard waste or 20,000 tons of mixed excavation waste. I don't know if the percentage is high enough to
No, they're
really
not gonna do
be
that,
overly
but-
concerned with it. So, it's tough. It's certainly tough to police and enforce that stuff, but I think it's a pretty decent system for now.
Eric, do we need separate motions for the declaration and the scheduled public hearing?
It could be helpful.
Oh, before you make the motion,
Hi,
Campbell.
Don, Campbell Sutton. So this goes back a number of slides, but it's my understanding that all of the local haulers for residential waste have become one group or are owned. Right, that's what the newspaper said. Anyway, some time ago. And so I'm wondering, is there a way in which, because they are just like a single ownership piece, that there's a way to improve the receivables you're getting? Do you know what I mean? Like, because I'm a little, I've never used trash pickup until this year. And I put everything in separate bags. I label everything. And now I'm a little concerned that it really doesn't matter and it's all going in the same thing, at which point I'd rather go and take it myself. But I'm thinking if they're all in this ownership piece, that perhaps there's, I'm just sort of wondering that. Thank you.
I guess I would say I'm not going to speak for the local private businesses and the haulers. I understand that, additional separation can be a challenge for the haulers from perhaps labor or, their trucking, their logistics. But as of right now, what is coming in is commingled and it comes at an additional cost, and we're looking to cover that. I have talked to Chris about, if haulers were interested in separating Nurnic and compostable and plastic and tin, would we be more than happy to, get rid of this fee? And I think the answer is yes. We're incurring an additional cost and we're just looking to cover that. But whether they are interested in doing that, I don't know. I'm sure we'll have conversations with them going forward.
Okay, thank you.
So first I'll make a motion to extend the emergency order
Second.
regarding leaf and lawn waste
All
to May
those-
1st.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously.
And then I'd make a motion to schedule a public hearing on tipping fees for April 1st.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That also carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have the Finance Department request for approval of bond anticipation note sale held on March 3rd, 2026 in the amount of $9,325,000 dated March 20th, 2026 for the following purposes: the C Street Pump Station, affordable housing land acquisition, airport milling and overlaying runway and airport projects. Good evening.
Thank you. So as noted, we're seeking board approval for the bond anticipation note that we recently held for sale in the amount of $9,325,000. We did list out the projects. As noted there, we held the competitive sale. 6 bids were received, which for this amount Hilltop felt was pretty competitive and good. And we're recommending an award to Truist Securities, who submitted the best bid with a net interest cost of 2.2894%. These are going through till July, when we have a much larger bond anticipation note rollover that we likely will turn some of this into permanent financing at that point, mainly from this issuance, C Street, and likely the CPC bond, and the airport will be getting grants they expect prior to June, just around June 30th, that will pay that amount off as well. So we're recommending approval of the sale to Truist Securities.
And there's a motion in the packet that we
Yes.
should reference.
Yep. So the motion would be to approve the vote that's contained in the select board's packet dated March 11th, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
Next up, we have a public hearing to consider the removal of the time of year restrictions for the 6 2-acre private aquaculture leases known as Head of the Harbor Cascada to open those parcels to year-round use similar to all other private aquaculture license or leases. Good evening.
Close enough. Good evening, everyone. Jeff Carlson, Natural Resources Director. We had this in front of you a couple weeks ago. As a quick reminder, as Erica gets this up, we have a number of areas that are private aquaculture leases within the harbor, the primary area being in the central harbor. And all of our areas are available for the growers to use year round. Each grower has a maximum of 10 acres that they're allowed by state law. And these 2-acre parcels that these 6 growers have that count against their 10 have a time of year restriction that limits them from using them during the summer months. After speaking with the growers, they would all like to be able to use these subtitle leases year round like their other 8 acres. We completely agree with them. And we're requesting that that time of year restriction be voted on to be removed by the select board. We can then send that off to the Division of Marine Fisheries, and their permits can be altered to be able to utilize those 2-acre parcels on a year-round basis, consistent with the rest of their leases.
Any questions?
Why
No.
was there originally a time of year restriction? What was the rationale?
So the original thought was when we originally brought the expansion and expanded that Head of the Harbor area, those guys wanted an area to be able to just overwinter in to get away from any ice or still be able to access things. As they've all kind of grown and scaled up, they're hoping to be able to use that because they're shuttling in between those spots a little bit more, just to gain them a little bit more flexibility.
This is a public hearing. If anyone from the public wishes to speak. Okay, first, I'll need a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. And what's the pleasure of the
I
board?
make a motion to approve removal of the time of year restrictions.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Now we're back to town manager's report. We've already done number 1. So it's to the Public Works Transportation Planner, request for approval of pilot stop signs on Surfside Road at the intersection of Surfside Drive and Maya Comet Road.
All right, back again. So Mike Burns, Transportation Program Manager, is on a well-deserved vacation this week. So I'm presenting this on behalf of Mike and Traffic Safety Work Group. In front of you for consideration is a request for approval of a pilot installation of 2 additional stop signs on Surfside Road at the intersection of Surfside Drive and Maya Comet Road. This request is a result of 2 things that basically happen in parallel. First is a citizen warrant article submitted for consideration at the 2026 annual town meeting. And second, the town has partnered with Mass DOT and Jacobs Engineering to evaluate conversion of this intersection from a 2-way stop control to an all-way stop control as part of the traffic safety action plan that has been in the works for a year or 2. The piloting of this new control condition is proposed through the month of April in an effort to give residents firsthand experience how the intersection functions with all-way stop control before voting at annual town meeting. Public feedback is being solicited to understand public benefit and concerns with the change in intersection control, and the public is urged to participate in a poll or leave comments in the transportation section of the town's Engage platform. I think Erica, all that's included in the packet was this figure, correct? So I'll do my best to kind of boil down the intersection evaluation to a couple key points. Based on an evaluation and analysis of traffic data, turning movements, speed data, and crash history, as well as existing site conditions, the intersection is recommended to proceed with conversion to an all-way stop control. However, the analysis indicates that during the peak season, this modification would increase traffic delays, contributing to congestion and potentially affecting bus operations. A couple of things I think should be noted as you evaluate the merits of the pilot and perhaps later a permanent conversion to all-way stop control are below. So first, between 2021 and 2023, there were 7 reported crashes at this intersection, of which 6 were angle crashes, which are typically mitigated by conversion to all-way stop control. As part of the consultant's report and recommendation, LED stop signs and doubled up stop signs, both on the left and right as you approach the intersection, were recommended to enhance visibility both during the daytime and nighttime and during adverse weather conditions like fog and rain. The LED lights, the LED lighted signs would also aid the drivers during the transition period when they need to become accustomed to stopping at a location where they did not have to stop prior to the conversion. The consultant understands that the town of Nantucket bylaws prohibit the use of lighted signs, therefore they are not proposed for this location. And similarly, the installation of doubled up stop signs is not preferred. Next, from the report, if a major street approach, Surfside Road in this case, is currently free flowing under two-way stop control, but operates at a level of service F as always stop control, then the intersection is considered unsuitable for always stop control conversion. However, it may not be automatically ruled out as other factors shall be considered. And to that point, the level of service, and again, when I say A through F, it's like a report card. F is not good. The level of service for Surfside Road approaches currently are level A. It's free flowing on Surfside Road, but if converted to always stop control, would drop to a level of service F. However, the level of service for Maya Comet Road and Surfside Drive currently is a level of service F, but would improve to B and C respectively if converted to always stop control. There is a lot more data, actual counts that I'm certainly not going to go through this evening, but ultimately I think this debate revolves around the weighing of importance of traffic safety versus congestion, as is many times the case. I have seen and heard people be pretty vehemently on one side or the other. We absolutely need to do this, or there's no way that this is a good idea. And frankly, I think they're both right. It's just a matter of what your priority is and how you typically use this intersection. I'd also add my personal take on piloting in general. And that is, I typically feel like there is no such thing as an unsuccessful pilot. Whether we as a community love or hate the condition, it at least informs us on how to move forward. I did happen to stumble upon results of an unofficial poll recently where I think 53% of respondents were in favor of this change and 47% were against it. So I would just caution that if we do pilot this and we're still split 50-50, we may have our first unsuccessful pilot program in recent history. I would also caution that installing new stop signs, especially without LEDs or doubled up signage, despite advanced warning signage, variable message boards, and potentially even presence by police to alert motorists to the new configuration. With that change does come a risk of introducing a condition that may cause a crash or crashes, as can also be the removal of these stop signs further down the road when the pilot period is ended. And then lastly, I think it's worth mentioning that based on the disparity of traffic volumes on the side streets versus the traffic on Surfside Road, frankly speaking, the most appropriate control method for this intersection would most likely be a street light. Of course, that's not in our toolbox. So these are the tough decisions that we are time and time again left with. So with that, I'll let the board discuss, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions I can.
Any comments?
Yeah, Drew, I like your strategy. Bring out the big guns to make this look like it's no big deal.
It's a tough decision, right? And we don't have the tools that other communities have in their toolbox when it comes to addressing these types of issues.
Don, I had one other question. Yeah. We're talking about through April. I think we should do it through annual town meeting because there's no point in taking out the signs. If town meeting votes loudly in favor of it, we would just leave them, right?
Yeah, I have no issue with that. I don't think a couple extra days is going to hurt us, especially to your point, if it were to be voted in and we're going to keep it. I don't think a 4-day gap of removing them and putting them back in makes much sense at all.
Amy?
Hi, Amy Eldridge. I think this is a great idea. It kind of keeps in uniform with what's happening at Bartlett, which thank you, Campbell. That's one of the most successful stop sign intersections to date. So I just think it makes sense with the flow, because then you've got the four-way stop at Fairgrounds and Old South. I think this is brilliant, and I want to thank the Flahertys for putting this on the town warrant. But I think that this is a fabulous idea, and I think it's actually going to work. My sister used to live in the affordable housing off of Maya Comet Road, and it is sketchy at best trying to get in and out of there, and the street's not quite perfectly squared up a line. So just giving people that extra chance to get in and out of those two side streets, and the Asplins from having to deal with significant damage to their property every time somebody goes through their fence and could plow into their house. So again, I thank the Flahertys for putting this forward, and I think it's a brilliant idea. Thank you.
Walter?
Walter Flaherty. I did put in an article for the town meeting this year. So I've been I've been talking with the traffic safety work group, Mike Burns, for the last 4 years. And hopefully this will resolve the problem that's caused at that intersection. And excuse me. The other thing is, I hope it doesn't cost the town any money. I've done some research with the planning board, and when they developed Ellen's Way, there was a list of items that the planning board rejected in lieu of a $15,000 payment to the town for the improvement of Myakama Road and Surfside Road intersection. So that money should be available someplace. I do have a records request in to find out where that money is. I just haven't got any information back yet on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Campbell?
Hi, just very quickly. When it comes to congestion in this area, I think it can be a lot like the Surfside Bartlett Road. This time of year, it's not really an issue, but many of us just stop naturally to let people out, right? We see them there. We're like, we're not going to go, okay, we're going to keep going. It's like, you know, you stop. So there's already an informal four-way stop sort of happening there. I mean, it would be great if we could just put things in during the summer and take them out in the winter, but that doesn't really work. And so to my point on the congestion, I think what I've found, and hopefully others have found at the Bartlett Surfside stop, is that traffic keeps moving. All right. It doesn't back up and not move. It's just, it takes you a little bit of time, but you know you're getting there. And if you time it from the high school to your turn at Bartlett Road is under 90 seconds. I mean, it keeps traffic moving. It doesn't just stop traffic. So I think for safety's sake and for pedestrians, especially in this area, I think it could be very helpful. So thank you. And it should be less than $5,000.
Erica?
Sorry, I'm sure you're probably ready to vote on this, but I just wanted to say too that there is an NRTA bus stop at this intersection. And a lot of people cross Surfside Road to go down My Comet Road. And I think that having that stop sign in place will make people more aware of that crosswalk that's existing there. I drive this route almost every day, and people are constantly waiting or like jutting out, walking across, and it's can be scary. So
I'll just echo what Campbell said. The voluntary stopping to let people turn is actually really dangerous versus an actual stop, because you're interpreting the other driver's behavior, you're guessing. So it's actually worse. So on that note, I would make a motion to approve the trial through town meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously.
Thank you much.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have select board reports and comments, update on the investigation of the African Meeting House vandalism.
Yes, Madam Chair. Not much new, because again, he's the investigator's investigating, not really telling me what he's investigating. But I can make some assumptions of where he is. He is presently has requested information from the Cape and Islands DA office. So that is what he's looking at now, if he can get it. And I've talked with our counsel about this, that may be a hurdle.
Okay, thank you. We'll stay tuned on that. Are there any committee reports? Next up, we have the public hearing for the Schwartz HDC appeal, and we just need to reopen this public hearing that was continued to today and make a motion to continue it to April 1st.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously. And one more motion tonight.
Move adjournment.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries unanimously.